train come a-rolling, clickety-clack. Everybody trying to get a ticket to go, but those who go, they don't come back. They're going way down, Hadestown, way down under the ground.
Anais.
Hello.
Thank you so much for joining us today. It's really a pleasure to be with you. Besa and I were really talking last night, kind of geeking out a little bit. About, this piece of work. We want you to tell us some of the inspiration behind it, because I know it's taken a long time to really see it through to what it is today.
Yeah, it's a really long road to Broadway. Basically, the show started in 2006 in my home state of Vermont. We did like a DIY community theater production of it, and then made a studio recording of the music, and kind of moved into the music world for a while. We toured around as kind of like a radio novella version of it. And then I moved to New York. I met Rachel Chavkin. I started working with the producers, and many more years of development. But I think when I first started, I was in my 20s then, and I was right out of school, and I was kind of a idealistic, creative young person coming out into the world and kind of coming up against the way the world is. And that is the story of Orpheus, right? He's this idealist, this dreamer, this artist, and then he comes face to face with the kind of the rules of the world. And that's inherently like a political story, but it's also like a coming of age story and a love story. And that's sort of where the show came from.
I love it. Tell me this, how do you feel like you personally relate to your show at this point in your life?
Oh man, I mean, I lived with it for so long, and was just almost couldn't see the forest for the trees because I was rewriting it. This line, that line, trying to find a rhyme for something. And then when I finally had to put the pencil down and see it, I was like, it's a whole world that it doesn't rely on me. I'm not even in it. It's. And I will never know what someone else's experience of the show is. Like I remember when we opened up on Broadway, I jogged by the theater early in the morning, and I saw these kids that were on the sidewalk waiting to get tickets, and some of them were dressed up as our characters. And I was like, I have no idea what this show means to these kids.
Yeah.
And I love that. It's a very humbling experience to just look at this thing that is like as much effort as I put in and all of us who worked on it put into it, it doesn't belong to us. It's its own animal.
Well, I'll say this. I mean, clearly 8 Tonys later, we're talking about something that has been historic in its way and of its kind, just such a unique nature. Tell us a bit about what that means to you and how you responded to the rest of the world responding to your piece of work.
Yeah. Wow. And when I think about the Tonys, it's all a blur for me. I see pictures of my phone from that time. I'm like, who is that? Like whose life is that? What did it mean? Obviously we didn't do it for the awards. It was moment to moment, just enjoying the process of making art and kind of discovering what it wanted to be. And then, of course, we did want to get it to Broadway, and that in its own right, it felt like a real arrival. The awards meant so much because it brought the show to the attention of a lot of folks that might not otherwise have seen it. There were some historic wins. I loved watching Andre DeShields accept his Tony and give that speech that's kind of like lives in, forever. For myself and Rachel, it is an industry that is changing, but there are not a lot of women that are nominated, let alone win Tonys for direction and for composing or writing. So that felt like an important kind of public event. I have 2 daughters, I was telling you, and my older was 5 years old when that happened, and I was so proud to show that to her, and to take her to Broadway, see the marquee, the sign with my name and Rachel's name up there, and she was like, that to her was not an extraordinary thing. It was like, oh yeah, my mom did that. Which is cool.
Hers
Right.
like normal life. She's like, yeah, everyone mom does this. Like, doesn't your mom do this? My mom does this.
Yeah.
Speaking of like little kids that are growing up, I'm pretty sure, like you said, they're dressing up as the characters, which means they've done all of their research. What about the little ones that are inspired by you and they want to do their own Broadway, but I don't know, maybe they can't get out of their heads, or maybe they're just worried that people wouldn't like it? What would you tell them?
Oh, wow. That's a great question. Well, I have to say, I didn't come from the Broadway world or even the theater world. I came really from, I don't know, folk music. And it was a very organic process of getting to Broadway. And I feel like this is a moment where Broadway and theater everywhere is very open. The doors are open, for people that are coming from unconventional places and experiences and genres, so that's awesome. And I also think just creatively, you gotta be able to put out mistakes. It was this thing, it took 12 years. There were so many drafts of it. It was as if we were publicly failing again and again. I mean, there's also succeeding, but I feel like that's the thing I think about with my daughter, she can be sort of perfectionist. She doesn't want to do a thing unless she's going to be good at it right away. But I feel like with creative work, you just have to make a song and then make a better song and then make an even better song. And that's how it works. No one pops out the gate like fully formed.
It's kind of like creating like your own product or even a clothing line. Like you order those first samples and you're like, okay, this is cool. I can sell some of these, but now that I see it, I can make it a little better.
Yeah.
But you kind of have to like start. So I guess it's kind of like do it afraid, if you will.
Yeah, I love that. It's like you have to see it.
Yeah.
I learned so much from Rachel Chavkin, the director of this show, and she, part of her kind of creative ethos is you have to make a choice in order to then make a better choice. And for me, when I'm writing, I want it to be perfect, and I really, I can get a little paralyzed by that because. But then if you actually make a choice and put it on its feet and see it, then you can then decide this is working or this is not working because of this reason, and go in and make it work.
Well, you not only are doing great work in terms of the musicality that we're going to be seeing later on tonight. I know we're excited for that. But, you also have these staple characters. We're talking about kind of Greek mythology coming to life in this way. Tell us about, your choice to say, I'm going to use that pathway, and maybe some characters that are known kind of out there in the world. People have their own ideas of these characters. When I think of Hades, right, it really strikes me as a really strong character. So tell us a little bit about why you said, I'm going to choose these kind of known characters to really bring this story to life.
I mean, the myths are so powerful, they are just so old and so deep, and they keep on kind of refracting light in different ways. The characters are archetypal, and I fell in love with Orpheus and the kind of archetype of this young, naive poet character, this optimist. But I equally fell in love with the other characters. Hades. This in our telling of the story, he's he's the boss. He's the king of the underworld. He's a wealthy man, and that's actually in the Greek mythology. Hades is sometimes called the wealthy one. He represents death, but also wealth, and especially the wealth that comes from, under the earth. And the fact that he's married to Persephone and has this extraordinary arrangement where she's above ground for half the year, and that's when the summer happens, and then she's below ground with him for the other half of the year. And she's the queen of nature, the queen of the seasons. It really felt very beautiful and kind of metaphorical that they have this troubled marriage, like this king of industry and then this queen of nature, and to sort of pit them against each other and also allow them to be a kind of an older, more kind of weathered version of our young lovers. Yeah, what can I say? It's with the mythological stuff, I feel like there was a lot of creative work that went into it, but it also was kind of unearthing these archetypes that already exist. And a lot of us felt like at different moments, like we were chipping away at a sculpture that was already in the stone, and you'd sort of chip away, and then be like, oh, that costume choice, or that, that staging choice, or that lyric, that's the sculpture in the stone.
There it is.
Love it.
Yeah.
Well, I have one last question for you, at least personally. I don't know about Trae. My question is, if you had to describe Hadestown in one word, what would be your word?
That's so hard.
I'll give you three if you need three.
words?
I'll give you three.
It's okay. I'm gonna say community, celebration, and ritual.
I love it.
There we go. There we go. Well, lastly, here we always want to hear from someone like yourself. What is it you want people to walk away from? You have this LA premiere tonight, this amazing cast. And as somebody who, you said 12 years in the making, when you think about every time it hits the stage, what is it that you want one of these audience members or all these audience members to kind of walk away with?
Yeah, I mean, I think Hadestown is obviously, it's a tragedy. The story is tragic, but the telling is very celebratory, and that's why I chose that as one of my words. Like, it's an event that is about communal storytelling, and just the power of the stories we tell together, and the power of music to transform us individually and as a community and as a world. And so, especially in these times, the pandemic has just hit the whole performing arts world so hard, and in so many ways people are trying to just claw their way back. And I think if there's one thing that no one is taking for granted, it's the preciousness of just gathering in a room with other humans, on the same night in the same house, and hearing a story sung once again.
Yeah, there we go. Oh my goodness. We are so grateful for your presence. Thank you so
I'm
much.
grateful.
Anais.
Thanks for taking the time.
This is beautiful. We can't wait to see it tonight.
Awesome. Thanks for being
Thank
here.
you. Thank you for having us.
Thank you both.
Down under the